The first time Tyler said something that crossed the line, I laughed it off. Not because it was funny, but because admitting it wasn't would have meant admitting I felt something I wasn't ready to name. Tyler was my mentor. That's how everyone introduced him. That's how I introduced him too, even in my own head, like repeating it enough times would keep things in the right place. He was supposed to be the guy who helped me figure out my career, my confidence, my direction. Not the guy whose voice stayed in my head long after our meetings ended. Not the guy who looked at me a second longer than necessary and made my chest feel tight. I'm Brandon. I was 24 when I met him, fresh out of college, insecure in that quiet way where you pretend you've got it together while constantly waiting to be exposed. Tyler was 32, calm, grounded, the kind of guy who didn't waste words. He dressed simply button-downs, sleeves rolled up, watch always on his left wrist, but somehow made it look intentional, like he knew exactly who he was. We worked in the same building, different floors. He wasn't assigned to me officially at first. He just noticed me. That's what it felt like. He'd stop by my desk, ask how a project was going, offer advice that was actually useful instead of vague motivational crap. "You're good," he told me once, leaning against the edge of my desk. "You just don't trust it yet." That stuck with me. A few weeks later, he suggested we grab coffee. Mentorship, he said. Nothing formal. Just talk. I remember nodding too quickly, hoping he didn't notice how my hands suddenly felt clumsy. Our first coffee turned into a weekly thing. Same CAF Kratka, same corner table. Tyler always got an Americano. I switched between drinks like that somehow made me look less nervous. He asked about my goals, my family, why I chose this field. He listened in a way that made you forget to guard yourself. No phone, no interruptions, just eyes on me like what I was saying actually mattered. That's how he earned my trust. The line didn't get crossed all at once. Crept. It started with compliments that felt more personal than professional. "You clean up well," he said once, looking me over after a presentation. Not in a gross way, not obviously, just enough to make me wonder if I imagined the tone. Another time, when I mentioned I hadn't been sleeping much, he frowned and said, "That's not good for you," softer than necessary, like he cared in a way mentors weren't supposed to. Still, I told myself I was projecting. I was gay, not out at work, and Tyler was just Tyler. Confident guys always get misread, right? Then came the night it shifted. We stayed late finishing a project. The office emptied out one by one until it was just us and the hum of fluorescent lights. I was exhausted, slouched in my chair, staring at my screen like it might start making sense if I waited long enough. Tyler stood behind me, reading over my shoulder. I felt him before I saw him. His presence had weight. "Hey," he said quietly, "take a breath." I exhaled without realizing I'd been holding it. "You push yourself too hard," he added. I shrugged, trying to prove I belong. There was a pause. Then he said, "You already do." I turned in my chair to thank him and realized how close he was. He didn't move away. Instead, he tilted his head slightly and said, almost casually, "You know, not everyone here appreciates how good you look when you're focused." My heart stuttered. I laughed. Automatically. The safe response. The easy one. "Guess that's a bonus," I said. Tyler smiled, but his eyes didn't. They searched my face, like he was waiting to see if I'd pull back. I didn't. That was the moment I should have reset the boundaries. Made a joke. Changed the subject. Packed up and gone home. Instead, I stayed right there, pretending my pulse wasn't loud enough to hear. Because part of me already knew. This wasn't just mentorship anymore. And whatever Tyler was about to become to me was going to complicate everything. After that night, everything felt louder. Not in an obvious way. Nothing dramatic happened. Once you notice a shift, you can't unsee it. Every interaction with Tyler carried an undercurrent now, like a sentence that never quite finished. He still acted like my mentor, still asked about my progress, still challenged my ideas, pushed me to speak up more in meetings. But there were moments, small, quiet ones, that didn't fit the role. The way his eyes lingered when I talked. The way he stood a little too close when we were alone. The way he remembered things I'd only mentioned once, casually, like they mattered. I told myself I was reading into it. Then he started texting. First, it was harmless. Links to articles, comments about work. Saw this and thought of you. Normal mentor stuff. But the timing shifted. Messages came later, after hours. Little check-ins that had nothing to do with projects. You still at the office? Did you ever get some sleep? How'd the presentation feel afterward? I'd stare at my phone longer than necessary before replying, aware of how much I wanted those bubbles to pop up again. One night, I didn't answer right away. I was lying in bed, phone on my chest, debating whether silence was safer. Another message came through. Did I say something wrong? That's when my stomach dropped. I replied immediately, no, just tired. His response was instant. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. No emoji, no punctuation beyond that period. Somehow it felt intimate anyway. The next week he suggested drinks. Not coffee, drinks. There's a place near my apartment, he said, leaning back in his chair like it was nothing. Good whiskey, low noise. Easier to talk than that Seafakrotka. I hesitated, just a beat too long. He noticed. If that's weird, he added, carefully neutral. We don't have to. No, I said too fast. It's fine. He smiled. Not the polite one. The slow, knowing kind. The bar was dim and quiet. All dark wood and low lighting. Tyler looked different out of the office. More relaxed. Sleeves rolled up farther than usual. Forearms exposed. I caught myself staring and immediately hated how obvious I probably was. We talked about work at first. Then life. Then things that weren't on any agenda. You ever feel like you're always 2 steps behind where you should be? I asked after my second drink. Tyler watched me for a moment before answering. All the time. Difference is, I stopped letting it define me. I nodded, swirling my glass. Must be nice. It's learned, he said. Not earned. The way he said it made me look up. His gaze was steady, serious. You don't give yourself enough credit, Brandon. There it was again. My name said like that. Not formal. Not casual. Personal. I swallowed. You say that a lot. Because it's true. A silence settled between us. Not awkward. Heavy. Then he said it. Soft. Measured. Like he'd practiced the tone. Can I ask you something? And you tell me if I'm crossing a line? My heart started pounding so hard I was sure he could see it. Okay, I said. He didn't look away. Do you ever feel like we're not just mentor and mentee anymore? The bar noise faded. All I could hear was my pulse. I don't know, I said honestly. Do you? His jaw tightened, just slightly. Yeah. The word sat between us, undeniable. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, he continued. And I don't want to mess with your career. That matters to me. You matter to me. That was the problem. I should have said something safe. Something mature. Something that put distance back where it belonged. Instead, I asked, what does that mean? Tyler leaned in. It means I think about you more than I should, he said quietly. And I've been trying to pretend that's not happening. My throat felt dry. Me too. The confession surprised us both. He exhaled slowly, like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. Brandon, this is dangerous. I know. Neither of us moved. At my car, Tyler said, we should slow this down. I nodded. Yeah. He hesitated, then added, but I don't want to stop talking to you. My chest tightened. Me neither. As I drove home, hands shaking slightly on the steering wheel, one thought looped in my head over and over. This wasn't a crush anymore. It was a choice, and I had no idea which way it was going to break. Slowing it down lasted exactly 3 days. That was how long it took before Tyler found another excuse to be near me. A review session. A walk between buildings. An offhand, you got a minute? That always turned into 20. What changed wasn't the frequency, it was the honesty. We stopped pretending there wasn't something there. We just didn't name it out loud. The office became a minefield of almost touching hands when passing documents. Almost looks held a beat too long before we remembered where we were. Almost conversations cut short when someone walked by. It was exhausting and intoxicating. One afternoon, Tyler asked if I wanted to walk during lunch. No CAF no bar. Just air. We ended up at a quiet park a few blocks away. Sitting on opposite ends of a bench like distance might help. Didn't. You've been quiet, he said. I shrugged. Thinking too much. About us. I laughed softly. You don't miss anything, do you? He leaned back, eyes on the sky. I miss plenty. I just don't say it. That made my chest ache. Tyler, I said, then stopped. I didn't know how to finish. He turned to me. Yeah, this is messing with me, I admitted. I don't know how to be normal around you anymore. His expression softened. I don't want to be something that makes your life harder. Then why does it feel like you already are? The words slipped out before I could soften them. He didn't flinch, just nodded once. That's fair. Silence stretched between us. People passed by. Life went on. Then he said, quietly, can I tell you something I probably shouldn't? I looked at him. Seems on brand. A corner of his mouth twitched. I've been the responsible one my whole life. The guy who does the right thing. The safe thing. He paused. You make me want to be reckless. The honesty hit harder than anything else he'd said so far. That's not fair, I said. You can't put that on me. I know, he replied. I'm not asking you to carry it. I'm just explaining why this is hard for me too. I swallowed. Then what do we do? He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was lower. We stop pretending this is nothing. My heart raced. And then we decide if it's worth the risk. The word risk echoed in my head. His job, my reputation, the imbalance of power we kept skirting around but never said outright. Are you still my mentor? I asked. He held my gaze. Not if this becomes something else. That was the moment it clicked. This wasn't flirting anymore. It was a fork in the road. That night I couldn't sleep. I replayed every look, every word, every way he'd said my name. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. Tyler. I stared at it, heart pounding. I keep thinking about what you said today, the message read. About me making your life harder. I typed, deleted, typed again. You don't make it harder, just more complicated. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Would it be a mistake if I asked to see you right now? My breath caught. I knew I should say no. I knew saying yes meant something would change permanently. Instead, I replied with the truth. Probably. A pause. Are you still saying yes? I didn't overthink it this time. Yeah. 20 minutes later, there was a knock on my door. Tyler stood there, jacket half-zipped, hair slightly messed like he'd run his hands through it one too many times on the drive over. He didn't smile. Hey, he said. Hey. Neither of us moved. The tension was almost unbearable. I don't want to do anything you're not ready for, he said. And I don't want this to be something you regret. I stepped back, opening the door wider. Then don't leave. That was all it took. The door closed behind him, and for a second we just stood there, inches apart, breathing the same air. Then Tyler did something that finally erased any doubt. He asked, softly, "Can I kiss you?" This wasn't a mistake. This was the beginning. We sat on the couch instead of going anywhere else. That felt important. Like choosing not to rush was the only thing keeping this from tipping into something we couldn't come back from. Tyler leaned back, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. We need to talk about what this means. I nodded. I was hoping you'd say that. He glanced at me. You don't look relieved. I'm not, I admitted. But I'd be more freaked out if we didn't talk. He exhaled a quiet laugh. Yeah, same. There was a long pause before he said, if we do this, really do this, I can't be your mentor anymore. The words landed heavy, even though I'd known they were coming. I figured, I said. That's probably necessary. It's more than probably, he replied. Something about the firmness in his voice steadied me. It reminded me why I trusted him in the first place. What about work? I asked. People will notice. They always do. He nodded. Which means we don't give them anything to notice. Is that you saying this stays a secret? For now, he said carefully. At least until we know what this is. I didn't love that answer. I didn't hate it either. So what is it? I asked. Tyler looked at me, then really looked at me. Not like a mentor. Not like a guy flirting to see what happens. I don't know yet, he said. But I want the chance to find out. That was enough. The next few weeks were a masterclass in restraint. At work, we were careful to the point of ridiculousness. Professional. Polite. Almost distant. Anyone watching would have thought things had cooled off, not intensified. Outside the office, it was different. We didn't jump straight into labels or expectations. We went on walks. Late dinners. Tyler surprised me there. I'd assumed he'd be more confident, more sure. Instead, he checked in constantly. Is this okay? Tell me if I'm pushing. You can change your mind. It made me feel seen. Safe. One night, lying next to him, I traced lazy patterns on his arm and asked, "Do you ever regret starting this?" He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I regret not being able to be simpler about it." That's not an answer. He smiled faintly. No, I don't regret you. That should have been enough. But nothing exists in a vacuum. Especially not something like this. The first crack came at work during a team meeting. Tyler challenged one of my ideas fairly, professionally, but my chest tightened anyway. Old instincts flared. Mentor and mentee, not equals. Afterward, I avoided him. Not on purpose. Just instinct. He noticed. That night, he said, "You pulled away today." "I didn't mean to," I replied. "It just reminded me of how this started." He nodded slowly. That's what I was afraid of. We sat in silence, the weight of it pressing down. "I don't want to feel like I owe you anything," I said finally. "Or like you're holding power over me, even unintentionally." His jaw tightened. "I never want to be that guy." "Then we have to be honest when it feels off," I said. "Even if it's uncomfortable." He reached for my hand. "Deal." It helped. For a while. And deep down, I think we both knew the story wasn't headed toward an easy ending. Not because the feelings weren't real, but because real things cost something. The thing about cracks is that you don't notice them spreading until something slips through. For Tyler and me, it was a promotion. Not his, mine. I found out on a Tuesday morning, called into a small conference room with frosted glass walls. HR smiled too much. My manager shook my hand. New title, more responsibility, different team. A real step forward. I should have been thrilled. Instead, my first thought was Tyler. I didn't tell him right away. Not because I didn't want to, because I didn't know how. What did it mean now? We'd already shifted things to avoid the mentor dynamic. But this made it official. Different reporting lines. Less overlap. Less cover. He noticed something was up the moment he saw me later that day. "You look like you're about to burst," he said quietly as we passed in the hallway. "Good burst or bad burst?" I asked. "Only you get to decide that." That night, I told him everything. The offer, the timeline, the implications. Tyler listened without interrupting, but I could see the mix of relief and something else in his expression. "This is good," he said finally. "This is really good. You don't sound convinced." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I am. I just didn't expect it to hit me like this." "Like what?" "Like I'm proud of you," he said, then corrected himself. "And a little scared." I frowned. "Of what?" "That now you don't need me at all." The words landed heavier than I expected. "That's not true," I said. He shrugged. "It might be." The shift happened slowly after that. Our schedules stopped lining up as easily. Work was busier. Expectations higher. When we did see each other, it was often late, tired, edges frayed. And there was something else too, something harder to name. I was changing. The more confident I got at work, the more I noticed moments where Tyler still slipped into that guiding tone. Not often. Not intentionally. But enough. "You should phrase it this way. I've been through this before, trust me. Let me handle that." Sometimes it helped. Sometimes it didn't. One night, after a long day, I snapped. "I don't need you to manage me," I said, sharper than I meant to. Tyler froze. "I wasn't trying to." "I know," I said, rubbing my face. "But it feels like it." Silence stretched between us. "I'm trying to unlearn habits," he said finally. "Give me time." "I am," I replied. "But you have to see it when it happens." He nodded, but something in his shoulders sagged, like the weight of holding himself back was heavier than he'd expected. The real breaking point came a few weeks later. A coworker made a joke. Nothing explicit, just enough. About me getting opportunities, thanks to good connections. I laughed it off in the moment. Tyler didn't. That night he was furious. Not loud, controlled. The kind of anger that burns hot and quiet. "I wanted to say something," he said. "I should have shut that down." "No," I replied. "You shouldn't have." He looked at me sharply. "Why not?" "Because it would have made it worse," I said. "Because it would have looked like you were protecting me." "I was," he shot back. "And that's the problem." The words hung between us. "You don't get to fight my battles," I continued, voice shaking. "Not anymore. I need to stand on my own." His expression hardened, not angry, but hurt. "I thought we were a team." "We are," I said. "But not like that." He turned away, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know how to stop wanting to shield you." "That's not love," I said softly. "That's control." He flinched. "I didn't mean it like that," I added quickly. "I know you don't. But intention isn't the same as impact." We didn't resolve it that night, or the next, but something essential felt out of sync, like we were moving at different speeds and pretending not to notice. One evening, weeks later, Tyler said the thing I'd been dreading. "I think I need to step back." My chest tightened. "From us. From being so central in your life," he said. "I don't want to hold you in place while you're moving forward." Tears burned my eyes. "That sounds like you're leaving." He shook his head. "It sounds like I'm trying not to." I didn't have a smart answer for that. Just a quiet, aching truth settling in. Stepping back didn't happen all at once. Came in inches. Fewer texts during the day. Plans made with more hesitation. We told ourselves it was healthy. Still hurt like hell. The strangest part was how quiet my life felt without Tyler woven into every corner of it. I hadn't realized how much space he occupied, not physically, but mentally. How often I'd think, I should tell Tyler this, before remembering that I wasn't sure anymore if I should. Work didn't slow down. If anything, it ramped up. My new role demanded focus, confidence, visibility. I was doing well, really well, and people noticed. Compliments came from directions I hadn't expected. Tyler noticed too. One afternoon, he stopped by my desk. First time in weeks. "Got a minute?" he asked. I nodded, heart already racing. We walked to an empty conference room, the door closing softly behind us. Felt too familiar, too loaded. "I wanted to say congrats," he said. "You're killing it." "Thanks," I replied. "That means a lot." He smiled, genuine this time. "I always knew you would." There it was again. That phrase. I knew. I took a breath. "Tyler, can we not do that?" His brow furrowed. "Do what?" "Frame it like I needed you to see it coming," I said carefully. "I want this to be mine." He held my gaze for a long moment, then nodded. "You're right. I'm sorry." It was the first time stepping back felt real instead of symbolic. That night, I didn't text him. Not because I was trying to make a point, because I wanted to see who I was without reaching for him automatically. The answer surprised me. I was lonely, but I was also steadier. Weeks passed like that. We still saw each other occasionally, still checked in briefly. Something unspoken hovered between us, unfinished, but no longer urgent. Then came the message I didn't expect. "Can we talk?" Not about logistics, about us. I stared at it for a long time before answering. "Yeah. Come over." When Tyler arrived, he looked different. Not dramatic, just lighter, like he'd made peace with something. We sat across from each other, the space between us intentional. I've been doing a lot of thinking, he said, about why this was so hard for me. I waited. I tied too much of my identity to being needed, he continued, to guiding, protecting. When you started standing fully on your own, it scared me more than I wanted to admit. My chest tightened. You didn't need to be my anchor to matter. I know that now, he said softly. I didn't then. Silence settled. Not uncomfortable. Honest. So what are you saying? I asked. I'm saying I don't want to lose you, he replied. But I don't want to keep you in a version of us that doesn't fit anymore. I nodded slowly. Neither do I. He took a breath. Maybe we let this be what it was. Something real. Something important. Even if it doesn't look the way we imagined. The words hurt and healed. At the same time, you were my mentor, I said. Then you were something more. And then we both had to grow past that. He smiled sadly. You grew. I had to catch up. I stood, crossing the room, stopping just in front of him. I don't regret us. When he left, I didn't collapse. I didn't spiral. I stood by the window watching his car disappear and felt something close to peace. Not closure, but acceptance. Sometimes people enter your life to teach you who you are becoming. Sometimes they stay, and sometimes they step back so you can move forward. I didn't expect to see Tyler again the way I did. Not because we'd sworn each other off. Not because things were awkward. But because life, once it starts moving, doesn't usually circle back so cleanly. It was 6 months later. Different season. Different version of me. I was heading into a client meeting downtown when I spotted him across the street. Same walk. Same posture. Jacket slung over one shoulder like he never bothered adjusting it. For a second, I wondered if my brain was filling in gaps out of habit. Then he looked up. Our eyes met, and there it was. Recognition. Surprise. Something softer underneath. Brandon, he said as we crossed paths, stopping almost in sync. Hey, I replied, smiling before I could overthink it. Wow. Hi. He laughed quietly. Didn't expect this today. Me neither. We stood there, traffic rushing past. Two people who shared a history no one else could see. You look good, he said, then immediately added, Dash. I grinned. It's okay. You too. There was no tension this time. No sharp edge. Just familiarity without weight. Coffee? He asked, gesturing to the corner sa Efrakratka. If you've got time. I checked my watch. I've got 20 minutes. Felt symbolic somehow. Like neither of us wanted to rush, but neither of us needed hours anymore. We sat by the window. Different sa Efrakratka. Same kind of light. How are you? He asked. Good, I said, and meant it. Busy. Confident. Still figuring things out. He nodded. Sounds about right. What about you? He hesitated, then smiled. Learning how to let people surprise me. That felt like progress. We talked easily. No careful wording. No unsaid rules. He told me he'd switch teams, taken on a different role. Less authority. More collaboration. I needed it, he admitted. Forced me to stop being the guy with all the answers. I raised my cup. Welcome to the rest of us. He chuckled. You were always ahead of me there. I shook my head. You just didn't see it. There was a pause. Comfortable. I'm glad we happened, he said quietly. So am I. And I'm glad we ended the way we did, he added. Even if it hurt. I looked at him then, really looked, and felt something settle into place. Me too, I said. It taught me what I won't accept again. And what I will. His eyes softened. Someone's lucky. Maybe, I replied, when the timing's right. 20 minutes passed faster than expected. We stood outside again, that same street between us. Take care, Brandon, he said. You too, Tyler. We didn't hug. Didn't linger. Didn't need to. As I walked away, I realized something important. Tyler hadn't been a mistake. He hadn't been the love of my life either. He'd been a chapter. One that taught me how power can blur into care, how affection can hide inside guidance, and how loving someone sometimes means stepping out of their way. And as I headed into my meeting, shoulders back, heart steady, I knew this. The next person who loved me wouldn't be my mentor. He'd be my equal. The funny thing about closure is that it doesn't feel like a door slamming shut. It feels like breathing out after holding it for too long. A few weeks after I ran into Tyler, I caught myself thinking about him less, not because he mattered any less, but because he no longer occupied the space where doubt used to live. He'd moved into memory, a meaningful one, a warm one, the kind you don't flinch at anymore. Life filled in the gaps quickly. Work was steady, demanding, but in a way that felt earned. People came to me with questions now, trusted my judgment, listened when I spoke. The quiet confidence Tyler once told me I had finally felt real. And then there was Alex. He wasn't dramatic about his entrance into my life. No sparks the first second, no cinematic nonsense. He was just there, a friend of a friend. A guy who laughed easily and asked thoughtful questions and never once tried to tell me who I should be. The first time I disagreed with him, he smiled and said, "Okay, tell me more." That alone should have told me everything. We took things slow. Not because we were scared, but because neither of us needed to rush. There was no imbalance to navigate, no hidden rules, no roles to escape. One night, months in, lying next to him, he traced circles on my shoulder and asked, "You ever been with someone who changed you?" I thought of Tyler, of who I was before him, of who I became because of him. "Yeah," I said, "but not in a bad way." Alex nodded. "Those are the ones that stick." He was right. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about Tyler, not with longing, but with gratitude. For the way he challenged me. For the way he cared even when he didn't know how to do it cleanly. For the way he stepped back when it mattered most. Not everyone gets that ending. If I could talk to my younger self, the guy sitting across from his mentor at a CF Kratkara, heart racing, mistaking intensity for destiny, I'd tell him this: some people come into your life to teach you how to see yourself. Others come to walk beside you once you already can. Tyler was the first. Alex is the second. And me? I'm no longer waiting to be chosen, guided,